Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Sorry if you were watching me stare at the screen for a second. I can't see the video. My name is Devin Barrett, also known as DBB. Yes, you know me, and I'm one of the software training consultants here at ConnectWise. And today, for this 15-minute session, I'm going to be talking all about RMM and BrightGauge, some very amazing tools that we have. They integrate incredibly well together. And I just wanted to make sure you guys were comfortable with them. I've been talking to our partner success team, our product teams. They said there's a couple issues that they've seen commonly having partners having issues with. So I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page before we moved on. Afterwards, we'll do a quick Q&A session if you guys are down with that. I love a good game of pin the tail on the go ahead and throw those in the comments section. I'll answer whatever I can for you. All right. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is, surprisingly enough, a lot of people don't know that they have access to BrightGauge. BrightGauge already integrated within your system for, I believe, 99% of the. I'm going to bring you over to your BrightGauge instance. It's going to ask you a couple questions when you're onboarding for it, and you'll already be integrated within RMM and ready to rock and roll with the tool set that we have there. As you can see in my system, I have a little bit more than most people, but that's because it's a training environment. And we have a litany of data sets that we have the availability to access. One of the cool things that I like to highlight here, let's see if I can do the highlight option. I don't have that here, but you'll see over in the sync section, that would be our synchronization 2.0. And that's actually an incredible feature that we've incorporated within that integration between BrightGauge and RMM. 99% of the data sets that you're going to see and the data sources that you have available to you, they sync somewhere between every 2 hours and 24 hours, which makes a lot of sense. BrightGauge was not meant to be a synchronous system that you're monitoring on a regular basis. It's supposed to give you a general snapshot of information. But you guys asked for more than that. We wanted to give that to you. So a couple of these data sets, including device availability, excuse me, that screen's hidden, actually have a lot more information in them. Let me go ahead and bring this over really quick so you guys can see my screen. So here you are. I'm looking over at all data sources. Let me switch that over to command so it looks similar to what you guys had on that one snapshot. And if I go in here, again, most of the data sets you're going to see, they'll happen every 24 hours, every 2 hours, depending on how critical that data is and how quickly you want to do it. You'll see here that we're syncing all this information every second. That's all the information that we're pulling from RMM. That's particular for this data set. I believe we're also doing that for some of the data sets for PSA, and we're also doing that for cell as well. So if you want to get that really responsive data, you want a live dashboard for your technicians so they can see as soon as there's an emergency or as soon as there's a critical problem, you can put that on the screen for everybody to see. That's one way that we have access to do that. All right. Again, I was working with our partner success team, asked them, hey, what kind of common issues are you guys seeing when people are building gauges, working within BrightGauge, utilizing the tools that they have access to? And one of the common things that they brought up was actually the calendar date option. As I said, you're getting live information from a lot of these data sets that you have from RMM, but the problem with that is sometimes if you don't have your calendar date set correctly, it's not going to give you the information you want. The gauges weren't designed to build out and send information every single second unless you actually set them to do that. And sometimes people get confused. Here I have one of the gauges for our machines with potential performance issues. This is a common one that we have within the automated system by default. And you'll notice that the calendar date here says last in months. And I have that set to in months. And I have multiple layers within this gauge. If all of those aren't set to month and you try to get information from that gauge, it's going to either error out or it's not going to show you any consistent information with that. Yes, I have some servers with 95% availability, and that's going on a month scale. But if I have that on a different tab within that gauge, that it's only going to be every single minute, and that happens to be off for that one particular moment that they saw it, and I'm going to have a huge discrepancy within my data set. And that's going to confuse you. It's going to cause you some frustration. You're going to reach out to support. It's going to cause you a lot of difficulty. I don't want you to be in that situation. So making sure your filters are set to the exact same, especially across different data sets and different gauges, is going to make a lot more sense to you. Another common thing that we were bringing up, here's a new gauge that I've just been working on and troubleshooting through. I have this set to agent ID, and I can guarantee you in my test environment, they won't let me have 3,000 agents. I want to have 3,000 agents in my personal one, but Dev says I don't have access to it after some things that I've done. We won't discuss that though. But one of the ways I can filter this to some more concrete data is I'm going to utilize that is active. RMM is storing a lot of information from agents that either were uninstalled previously, network devices that were installed within the agent, some ghost information that was in there because it had an error or anything like that. So it's storing all that information to make sure you have access to it, and it's going to retain that for historical purposes. But I don't really need that for my gauge. I want to make sure that these are active agents that I'm actually troubleshooting on and I'm checking and getting information from within my dashboards. So I'm going to keep that to is active and make sure that whatever I'm utilizing is going to be there for people and they have access to it. So just a couple of quick troubleshooting tips that I know a lot of people find common issues with. Again, Partner Success says they see that all the time. They want to make sure that people are going to be happy and successful with it. So I hope that helps you out. And on that note, that's all I have prepared that I wanted to talk to you guys about and make sure that I gave you some information. And so let's go ahead and jump into some Q&A. If you have any questions, go ahead and pop those up into the chat. Okay, I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to type out your questions. Give you a couple quick housekeeping tips in case you didn't know that. Again, I am one of the software training consultants. I work on the education team. We build a lot of content within the university for you. We do monthly webinars on RMM, PSA, Cell, Automate if you're still a big fan of that. We go to conferences, we go to user groups, we talk to you guys about that in person. We want to make sure that you're comfortable and prepared with all the tools that we have available for you. I highly recommend just checking out. What criteria is active? Let me go ahead and go to that gauge. So here we are in that gauge that I was building. Is active is just a true or false statement that it's actively checking into the system as we're talking. If you go over here to our data set field guide, so you get a little bit more information on that, you can see it indicates that the machine is active or not within that given calendar date. So if I'm filtering it to a specific date, then it's only going to give me, is it active during that date and time? If it is just open and like on this one, that it's just going to use that across the entire scale of that. So I don't have a calendar date for this. So it's just going to say, is it currently active? And has it been currently active for that particular set? All right. I have a ticket open regarding server online offline status gauge in the executive dashboard showing incorrect data. I have been told several times it's a known issue. I don't have any information on that, Colin, but if you want to, if you go ahead and email me, I'm at education@connectwise.com. I'd be more than happy to find out about that for you. I'll find out which known issue that is, and I can get you a bit more information on that. It's showing them as offline or offline. Oh, yeah, no problem. Happy to help you out with that. What are some best practices when building out patching gauges, patching dashboards and gauges? So if we look, we have a lot of common ones that we have within the environment. One second, let me go ahead and bring that up. Go back here to my dashboards. Actually, hold please 1 second. I have a lot of terrible dashboards in here. I'm slightly embarrassed, just slightly. Um, but yeah, we have a lot of default ones where we're checking information for the standard best practices for patching. Is there anything outside of that that you were looking for in particular when it comes to patching information? Oh, okay. The primary thing for me, especially coming from an automate background, one of the things when we were building out a lot of the filters and the dashboards that we had was making sure that it was things that you had approved within your system. A lot of times, partners, and I don't blame them, if there's a patch that's an emergency or you just have a new guy on your team, they will actually push it out through various other methods. Sometimes I'm not a big fan of this, but I don't know your agreements, what you have with your clients. Sometimes people will push their own patches out, especially with Windows 10. I know that's a huge issue. 7 was also a problem back in the day. That's how long I've been with this. But people saw that a patch needed to be pushed out, and you have those clients that are just automatically going to push them out without giving you a chance to verify it. I feel like that's your bread and butter. I want to make sure you're successful with it. So that gives me a little bit of concern. But if you're patching it out that way and you're going through the Windows Update agent, it's not then sending that information to your RMM, whether that's Automate or RMM in this particular instance. And so we have no record of that. So that's going to show your patches are going to be out of sync with what's actually going on with the machine. The other best practice, I will tell you, and some people agree with me, some people won't, cheat. If you have your QBR with your client, there is no shame whatsoever in a week before that QBR walking into your NOC team, talking to them and making sure that every single one of those devices are looking good. I always run my reports 2 to 3 days before I'm actually meeting with a client to make sure that all my data is actually looking the way I want it to look before I send them that patching information and I have that QBR discussion. Most clients aren't looking at the reports you send them on a regular basis. Hopefully, if you're using BrightGauge or another tool like that, it gives them a little bit more access to it. But the only time they're really interested in that is when they're either looking to try to get money out of you or they think that there's a problem. They just want to make sure everything's going the way it needs to go. So I like to make sure, especially before my QBRs or before that gets sent out to a client on a regular basis, I have someone scheduled to take a look at all the information that's there and make sure it's right. If there's any patches we can push out of band or anything like that, I'd be happy to do that. That's typically the best practice I've always talked about when it comes to building out gauges or building out dashboards and reports for people. All right. Well, I'll give you guys a couple more seconds to go. I'll do a little bit more house cleaning. If you are feeling like coming down to Florida in June, if I remember correctly, I forgot the dates of it right off the top of my head, but we do have IT Nation Secure coming up. And then the day before that, we're also going to be doing another Automation Nation. I'll be there for the Automation Nation. That's where we talk all about our hyper automation. If you haven't had a chance to look into that, it's some really incredible stuff that we're building out in that, where we are expanding our workflow functionality into the ASIO platform. You can integrate multiple tools into it, including your RMM solution, whatever that may be. You can build custom actions in that. So whatever tools that you're working within your environment, you can incorporate that into a workflow and just automate a lot of those processes where people tend to drop the ball, which is very exciting for me. One of my goals of working at ConnectWise has always been I wanted end-to-end. As soon as you sell something to your client, it's automatically deployed through your RMM solution and you're just ready to rock and roll. So when they're asking, hey, when are you going to be able to launch this project? And you can say, it's already done. You just need to sign on the dotted line. That's always been exciting for me. So we're going to be talking about that during Automation Nation. Okay, so using is active counts, we have 7K endpoints, and that's not even close to what we have. When I export the data set, it shows the same endpoint multiple times. That means you might be seeing duplicates within your environment. The first thing I would check is to make sure that whatever AV solution you have has the proper exclusions tied to it for those devices so they're no longer showing as duplicates, because sometimes an AV will try to hold off on your RMM agent and cause it to duplicate like that. If you're running into similar hours issues like that, then I would definitely contact support and get that duplicate issue addressed. Once you get that done, that should resolve some of the is active issues that you're having. Also, as I was saying a little bit earlier, make sure that you're sending it for the calendar date that you have. Switch it to an inactive. The only issue is last date. I'm not sure I understand. So you have it set to last date and as well as is active, or the last date of the agent. Oh, the only difference is last date. So agents were attempting to check in, something stopped them from checking in, and the agent recreated itself. Yeah, I would definitely reach out to support for that one and try to get some troubleshooting done with that. I can't do that, unfortunately, here, but they may be able to give you a bit more guidance as to what may be causing it. Okay. We are trying to use a calculated gauge to graph out time to resolution for 4 hour, 24 hour, 40 hour, and more than 48 hours. Any suggestions? So you're pulling that information from your PSA. I don't know the PSA data set off the top of my head really well. I'd have to work with one of my colleagues to get a little bit more information on that, but I do like that idea. That's actually a pretty cool gauge I would like to build. Let me talk with my PSA people, and I'll probably bring that up in the community forums and just show you how I built something like that in there. So if you're a member of the university, if you go over to the community section, I'll have something over in the PSA section about that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. All right. Well, on that note, I do believe I am up on time. I'd like to thank you. So it's based. Okay, interesting. I could see that working. If you're using it based off of entered versus closed time difference. But then you're going to have people who are just using block time versus, like, that's a concern that you'd have. So I don't know if I would trust that 100%. Because you have the issue of you might have people gaming the system also. And I don't want to, I'd want to keep something a little bit more stringent than that. But it's an intriguing idea. Okay. Sorry, I got in the weeds there. My apologies, guys. But yes, thank you all so very much for joining us today. Tomorrow, we're going to be having quick recovery from system errors with my good buddy Danish. He's one of the PMs over on the RMM team, and you're going to get a wealth of information. So please join for that. And then we're doing an extended webinar on Thursday where you'll have a lot more of the product team able to answer some of your questions. And on that note, thank you all so very much for joining me. Hopefully I'll get a chance to see you guys again soon. Take care, everybody.